Squealing.
Well, welcome to RCBC.
Thank you.
Welcome.
How y'all doing?
Appreciate it. Good, good.
Yeah.
Be here.
Yeah. I want to do the announcements before I pray. Well, I want to ask if we don't have any monitors up here for the band, and they can't hear anything. So when the band's playing or anything else, they have no idea what's going on. All they can hear is everybody out here screaming. So keep it down a little bit. Well, you know, and then they won't have to play that loud, and maybe it won't keep going up as high as it is. Tomorrow we're going to be at the Boot Hill.
Yeah.
We're going to be there service about 10 o'clock. That's right on Main Street, downtown Daytona. And next week, that is next week, right there? They're going to have the last service in this building. This church has been here since Moby Dick was a minnow.
100 years.
Really long time ago. So it's been a while, and that's going to be the last service. Now we're going to have our service right here next Saturday night, and that'll be the last time that we'll have our service. Well, we're going on with First Baptist. We're going out there out west with them, and that's what we're doing. So they've made it part of us and invited us to be part of their service on the 29th. That's next Sunday. Now, we announced this last week, and we've announced it before, but guess what? The announcer was on glue or something. And it's not at 10:30, it's at 10 o'clock. That's 10. That's 10 a.m.
What time? 10.
10.
It's one of them Fields kids. They carry on regular, but that's, and I really would appreciate, and I think everybody, would agree with us, with any participation we could. We'd appreciate you out there. Because I know this has been a rough transition the past couple of months because nobody knew what time, where, what. But starting next month in October, things are going. Now, on a sad note, a brother of mine, long brother, anybody in town that rides bikes might have known him, but Broda passed away yesterday morning. And it was after a long cancer bout he had going on for years. And it's been a kind of rough couple of days for a lot of different people in this town. But I appreciate prayer for his old lady Dee and his family, and anybody else who was involved with him. So he left a lot of mark here. He's been here in this town in the biking area for about 30 years. He's doing pretty strong thing. Also, I'd like to bring in prayer for JW. I've been talking to him. I said, what's happening with him? But I don't like what I've been hearing there. So we need some real prayer for JW and his old lady. Because there's no sense in delivering. I can't think of anything else we have between here and next Saturday. So you want to hear anything from after next Saturday, you just come here next Saturday, and I can give you all announcements for that. Hint, hint. I'm not used to seeing all these empty chairs. It must be the elevator. I'm scared of the elevator. But you all bow your heads. Dear Lord, I'm not going to ask for prayer from everything that's here. I'm just going to ask you to forgive us for everything we've done that we know about, Lord, and everything we've done that we don't know about. I also want to thank you for all the blessings you've bestowed on us, Lord, that we know about and we don't know about. Now, I know there's a lot of people in here that have got prayers and they've got requests, they've got thoughts, Lord. I ask you to hear them and listen to them, Lord, because they're come here with their heart in their hands. We thank you for everything you've done, Lord. And we ask for special prayer for our transition to our new building, Lord. The church is the same, it's yours. The building will be different. I ask you to be with us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Let's all stand up. Let's sing some songs together. Right? Let's praise the Lord. Burn our hearts with you. You're the reason we're here. You're the reason we're singing. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of my brain. Glory on our face, looking to the sky, sending like a cloud, standing with us now. Lord, unveil our eyes. You're the reason we're here. You're the reason we're singing. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our brain. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our brain. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our brain. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our brain. Yeah. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our praise. Jesus, the name above every other name. And Jesus, the only one that could ever save. And worthy of every breath we could ever breathe, we live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love and those around me. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. When I was younger, my daddy said to me, it's okay to get love in the mystery. Sometimes you sit and wonder and understand what you see. Don't confuse the lines of truth and make believe. I'm pretty sure that Jesus ain't worried about tattoos and cigarettes. If you ever go to cross around your neck, what about loving your neighbor and giving to the poor? I just wanna love like that and nothing more. Maybe I'm crazy, Maybe I'm free. I just know I ain't the man that I used to be. On this side of heaven, we'll always get it right. Sometimes you rise above, sometimes you gotta fight. You never know the stories that lie beneath the skin, but judging now won't change the broken places they've been. Pretty sure that Jesus ain't worried about tattoos and cigarettes. If you wear a golden cross around your neck, what about loving your neighbor and giving to the poor? I just want to love like that and nothing more. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm free. I just know I ain't the man that I used to be. Pretty sure that Jesus ain't worried about tattoos and cigarettes. If you wear a golden cross around your neck, what about loving your neighbor and giving to the poor? I just want to love like that and nothing more. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm free. I just know I ain't the man that I used to be. Amen. Thank you guys for singing with us.
Oh, hey guys. Good to see you, right? Man, we've had a fun day getting to this point. Had our technical fun stuff. I love those moments because it makes you feel like, all right, well, this might be a real good one. So let's see how we do. Yeah. So you know, we were typing up words. If I didn't say hi to you when you came in, it's because I was typing up the words right away and getting to it. So, but let's go to prayer. Father, I thank you so much for everything you do for us, giving us a chance to just be in your presence and giving us a chance to be a part of your story. We're grateful. Lord, we just want to let go of distraction today. All the things that we think matter, we want to let it go. We want to learn more about you because we want to engage in a relationship with you. We're so grateful. We love you so much. It's in your name we pray. Amen. So I'm excited. I'm excited to get a chance to talk. I know I thank you guys. I just let you guys know I love this place. I love whatever building we're in. I love this place. Getting a chance to be a part, and you know all the hard work that goes into what we do. I do it every chance we get. So, and I thank Frankie and the guys for giving me a chance to just share what's on my heart tonight and step in for them a little bit. And one of the things that I've really been focusing on is my relationship with the Lord, my relationship in worship. And I think as we grow as a church, as we move forward as a church, this is something that we need to make sure that we're engaging in and teaching and moving forward as a unit, keeping unified in our voice for the Lord. So I've been reading this book. It's called How to Worship the King. It's by Zach Neese. He's from Gateway Church in Texas. It's a really great book, and I'm going to read the opening introduction for you. It's about a few minutes, but it's one of those that when I read it, I stopped and I read it again, and it was just one of those, yes, this is what I want for us to be in front of, to be not fall into the traps and the pitfalls that other churches have fallen into. I want us to be genuine in our worship, and I want us to focus right and do it right the first time. So I'm going to read that for you. Find the picture. My bookmark fell out. It's the least of my worries.
Technology.
Technology. This is a regular book too. So this is Zach Neese, and he's writing, why this book? Why write another book about worship? Haven't we covered this already? Haven't we pretty much said what needs to be said and understood what needs to be understood? I mean, come on, the church has been doing worship for centuries. And Israel did it for centuries before that. What more is there to write about? And see, it's funny, Christians have thousands of worship services around the world every week. Worship, in quotations, has become its own musical genre with its own artists, publicists, and fan base. You can tune into worship on the radio, and you can produce and record and package and market it and sell it at Walmart. You can even get a college degree in worship, but the church still has no idea what it is. Worship is in a fog. Even pastors and worship leaders don't really understand it sometimes, and sadly, most seem to be okay with that. So my question is, if even the leaders don't fully understand worship, how can they expect to teach people about it? And if they don't teach people about worship, how can they expect people to participate in it? If people don't engage in worship, how can we expect to invite the presence of God into our churches? If we do not invite the presence of God into the church, how can we expect His power to operate in people's lives? And if His power is not operating in people's lives, how can we expect to have anything other than a lifeless church? And if a church is lifeless, how can we change the world? And I read that, and I read it again, and I read it again. It's one of those things that I don't want that to be us. And I want you to know, as your worship pastor, as the guy who's doing this, I'm focusing on this personally so that I can make sure that we move forward, and we are not that church. So we want to engage, and that's why I love getting the chance to talk about worship today and to understand what it is. And you might see the royal priesthood. What does that mean? What am I talking about? So, before we jump into that part, we have to do some foundation work. So, let me paint you a scenario, and let's see if anyone can relate to this scenario. You recently found Jesus, right? You're in His saving grace, and you spend personal time with Him, and it's intimate, and it's powerful, and it's moments of just passion, and moments of crying out, and release, and just honesty between you and Him, and this intimate level, this connection. Yet, you read His Bible, and yet you witness some Christians, and you witness some churches that just don't line up to what you're reading, and don't line up to that experience that you just had. Where's that disconnect coming from? There's a difference between the experience we have alone and our one-on-one time in relationships with God and that experience that we share in the churches. And why is that? So, of course, I understand that we are all not perfect, and we're all making that movement to try to be more Christ-like. And the thing I like the most is the fact that we recognize that we are the sinners, and we are the ones that step back, and we want to do these steps to move forward. It's like in my marriage, my wife always wonders, because I'll come home with all these marriage books. She's like, do you have a problem? I'm like, no, I just don't want us to. Right? We read the book, and we do the things, and we do all that so that we don't have the problem, right? We stay in front of it. We recognize it while it's happening. We see that cycle, and we go like, whoa, this is getting too much about. That's why I love the fact that we had to come here for a little bit. I miss playing with Marcus, but it's not about the show. It's not about the song, band. We can do worship with the guitar. We can do worship with just our voice. Amen. We can do worship in that sense, just singing, right? Amen. Worship is more than the music. We're seeing that, and we're engaging in that here and now, you know? So, when we're alone with God, we have an important part to play. That's what we're finding the difference is. When we're alone with God, we're engaged in that relationship. We are a part of the equation. We're involved actively in that relationship. And see, sometimes we might step into a church where we're not actively in the relationship. We sit in the back, and we're not a part of it, and we let other people do all the ministering. And so we lose sight of that intimate connection, and we're like, man, this feels weird. How come this doesn't feel like the same God that I'm at home and crying with and getting forward progression with? And I come to some churches, and it just doesn't feel right. And that's why I think sometimes when you go to a church and it goes, oh, this feels right. I feel home.
Amen.
And I think it's because of that connection, and I want to make sure that we maintain, we recognize, and we move forward with it, not going, okay, well, that was cool, that was a really nice service. No, this is us together worshiping God.
Praise God.
So, that's the little bit of the disconnect that I see. See, we minister to God, and He ministers to us.
Right.
Okay? Sometimes I think churches in general, we lose that idea that we are supposed to minister to Him. That's our job. And then in that, He'll then return and minister to us. We're not here to get something out of it. You're not here to now granted we have, coffee, we have fellowship, we have donuts half the time, we have a great time together, but we come here, we should be coming here to spend and give everything that we have to Him. All our focus, all our energy, every bit of our demeanor and our smiles and how we approach the fellowship with one another, giving handshakes and hugs, that is giving Him honor and glory in what we're doing. So the goal is to have that same connection here in the house of worship that we do in our own personal, intimate time with Him. That's our goal. Sometimes we act a little bit different in church, and we tend to find our corners, and we don't apply, we don't engage in that active worship, right? That's what we want to focus on. So it's as if the congregation's role sometimes is, in some of these churches, mind you, and I'm not trying to point fingers, I'm not trying to do that, but it ends up being an audience. The preacher does a performance, the band does a performance, and you guys are spectators, and that is not what God intended for us to be doing.
Amen.
Not at all. So, we feel left out sometimes, and we want to focus on that and get into a place where we can engage in an active relationship inside His church, inside the congregation. Now remember, the church is not the building, the church is the people, it is the gathering.
Amen.
So today we're going to recognize God's calling into His service for each and every one of us. And I have a part to play, you have a part to play. We together as His unit, a unified body, have a part to play in the plan of God. And that involves worship. So, like I said, we're going to lay the foundation of that. We have to ask the question of, well, who am I? We have to understand our identity. Because our identity will let us know what we are equipped to do. We need to understand how we approach identity. We need to understand where we get our identity from. And I'm going to go through two different sides of this, and you're going to see the difference between identity and how we should do it, and sometimes how we are doing it. So we're looking for who we really are and what we're equipped to do, and answering this is important because it's a primary motivation of every action we take in our lives. So what is your identity? See, I'm a guitar player. Do I identify as just being a guitar player? Well, no, okay, well, I'm a guitar player and I play for the Lord, right? That's good, right? That's what it is. No. So much more than that. What if I lost my hearing? What if I was in an accident tomorrow and I couldn't play anymore? I would have an identity crisis. I can't serve Him anymore. And in this understanding would be, oh, well, if I'm of no use, if that's my identity, I'm now sitting in the back, not engaging in that active, intimate relationship anymore. I don't know how to function now. Because I put all my focus of my identity into that feature of me, that function. So, if I'm not a guitar player, what am I? How can I be used by God? That's the question people ask. How can God use me? We're going to get to that in a second. How can I serve my purpose? And how can I worship the Lord if I lose the ability to play the guitar, if I lose the ability to be that person that I have my identity in, who I believe to be? Maybe that's not it. Maybe I wasn't made to play guitar. Maybe I'm thinking, okay, maybe I was made for something more. Maybe I was made for something else. Maybe I misinterpreted my identity from the beginning. And this was just a really cool thing that He's allowed me to do, right? So we ask this question. In this case, it can be said that I'm letting my function determine my identity. My function. So if I can play guitar, then I have to be a guitarist. That's me. That's my function. Oh, I got right. It's been. Let me get past this slide real quick. If I can play football, then I must be a football player, right? That's how I see myself, and that's how others see me. If I ride a motorcycle, then I'm a biker. But you're more than that. We have more to it than this. That's not all we're going to be known as. You see, if we think this way. We've messed it up. We've confused our way of thinking. We've confused our view. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. That's really bright. We've messed up our personal religious views of ourselves. So we ask this question: do you want to be used by God? And see, most of us out there would probably say, yes, use me, Lord. Right? That's that prayer that some of us say, Lord, use me however you would see fit. But let me ask you this on top of that. Would you want to be used by your spouse? Would you want to be used by your friends, by your work, by your church, by your government? No way. Because see, when someone uses you, you're treated like a tool, not a person. And see, God's not after tools. He's after his people. He's after your heart. The Lord's not seeking tools. He's seeking you. He's seeking your heart. He's seeking a relationship with you, with all of us. And so where is this relationship if we are only asking to be used? Lord, use me. No, better prayer. Lord, I want to know you. Seek me and know my heart. I'm seeking you, Lord. That's the prayer we need to be doing. And guess what? Out of that relationship, you will be used. He's going to put you in places and opportunities where you're just going, wow, you need a guitar player. Huh. All right, well, I happen to know how to do that. But because my foundation is my relationship with God, not because I know how to play an E chord, or I was in a rock band at one point, right? It's so much more than that, because if that fails, my relationship was with him first, not with the function. And so I'll just find another way. Lord, now how can you use me? Serve cookies. Cool. I'm serving cookies and I'm doing whatever I need to do, right? We change our focus. So, the good news is God does not want to use you. He wants to know you. He wants to be known by you. And I read this in this book, and he put it this way. He said, God used Pharaoh, but he knew Moses.
Right.
God used Saul, but he knew David. God used Judas, but he knew Jesus. And I read that, and that's another, okay. That's why it took so long to get this particular message put together. There's a lot of those moments that I read.
Amen.
We were not created so God could just use us. We were created so God could know us.
Right.
And on that intimate, personal level that we were talking about earlier.
Amen.
See, God can use anything. But he sent his son so that he could have a relationship with us.
Amen.
There's nothing wrong with wanting to do God's will and to be of service, but we need to let it come out of that foundational relationship that we have with him. Let that be everything. Let that be the foundation, okay? Don't let your service, don't let your call to be in ministry or whatever it might be focusing on that. Don't let your worship be focused on, well, this is what I'm good at, this is what I know. Let it be the relationship that you have.
Amen.
So unfortunately, religion, it gets a bad rap, and it's been guilty of teaching us that we're just tools for the Lord. If we perform well, then we're pleasing to God, and if we perform poorly, well, then we can be dismissed, discarded. Because God can just find another useful tool. That's a bad way to think about it. But see, the issue with being a tool is that when it breaks, we tend to throw it away. You ever had a broken hammer? You don't keep it long. Try hammering with the upper end, no handle. It doesn't work. You ever had a broken drill and then try to screw in a screw with it? And I've done that because my battery died. It doesn't work. If it breaks, it's a broken tool and it's discarded. We get another one. We need to stop thinking about being tools and thinking about he's after us, our heart as a person. So, if this type of thinking, this mentality that people, this is how we get hurt by the church. See, there's some leaders in the church that do think of their congregation people as tools. I need more people in the band. I need more of this. I need more of that. We need to fill these seats this way and this way. Not worried about their heart and their connection and how we can bring them closer to God, but I need some more people to stand in the back. I need some security. We think, and it's not intentionally done that way. I just think we get caught up in it. But we need to be ahead of that. So religion says, I must do my duty in order to be of value to God. See, worship is the opposite of religion in that sense. It says, worship says, Jesus proved I am of value to God. I serve him because he also is of value to me.
Amen.
Religion teaches us that our function determines our worth and our identity. It says, I am because I do. See, worship's different. Worship teaches us that our identity determines our worth. And it determines our function. I do because I am. I am loved. I'm a part of the relationship. I'm a part of his plan. And see, God determines our identity. Isn't that awesome? Yeah. We are his. I'm a child of God. I am a worshiper of the King of Kings. He allows me to be a part of that. Amen. That's when we come in here and we're excited and we want to sing. And if you don't know that yet, man, it's great. We get to that point and this is what we're going to sing today. Open up the heavens. We want to see you. Not just words on the screen. This is amazing. So, God determines our identity. When we read the Bible, we find all different ways that God is helping us to realize our identity in him. He says things like, we are children of God. We are friends of God. We are more than conquerors. We are chosen. We are loved by God. We are citizens of heaven. We are the redeemed. We are saints. We are a holy nation. And yes, we are a kingdom of priests. And see, each of these identifiers lets us know three things. One, how God sees us. Two, how much he values us. And three, how we can serve his heart. Okay? So we could probably spend the rest of the year going through each of these identifying features that God has for us. Children of God, all these different ones. But I'm only going to focus on one tonight. Because it has a lot to do with where we are in our worship for him. We're going to focus on the kingdom of priests. We will see that all believers, every saved one of us, are priests of the Most High God. Priests of the Most High God. We are part of the royal priesthood. See, Exodus 19:5-6. It says, now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Never meant to be just a tribe that was called into a priesthood. It was meant to be a nation. An entire nation that would then teach the world how to worship God. That's what his intention was. But see, stuff happens, right? The golden calf happened. Idolatry and sin. And Israel rejected God and rejected their calling when they turned back to the lifeless and powerless Egyptian gods. If you don't know the story I'm talking about, you can check it out in Exodus. It's an amazing story. But his people turned their back on him and went back to the Egyptian gods while Moses was on the mount getting the word, getting the 10 Commandments and coming back. You see, that stuff took place. And we find how we went from an entire nation to just one tribe later in Exodus 32. It goes on where Moses saw the Israelites worshiping the golden calf, and he said, whoever is on the Lord's side, come to me. And only the Levite tribe came. So God consecrated them and set them aside as holy and blessed them. Now we're going to revisit some about the Levites, and they're going to help us understand kind of like a model of what it is to be a priest in just a few minutes. But how did we become priests? This was Old Testament stuff, right? How does this relate to us? I thought he was just talking to the Jews. He was just talking to the Israelites, right? Well, of course, Jesus changes everything. And so when we get to the New Testament, then that new covenant that took place, the old covenant is no longer. But the teachings are there. We're going to see what Peter has to say about this. How do we get involved? I mean, for all of history, the priesthood has been an exclusive occupation, right? It's been, and now this is according to people, not God, but it's kind of been restricted. Restricted to the Jews, restricted to the Levites, and then later in the Catholic Church, it was deemed that only they could ordain priests. It was restricted. Now remember, God wanted a nation, a holy nation of royal priests. And yet now we've restricted it down and down and further down. And so on through all the different types of ordinations in religion. But the truth is, as soon as you were saved, you were drafted, you were reborn as a priest. And how do we know that? I'm going to use a Frankism here. Ready? I'm glad you asked. Frank says that a lot. That's for you, Frankie. I'm glad you asked. Well, let's look at 1 Peter 2:5. It says, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. This is the new covenant. So what does this mean? Who's Peter talking to? He's talking to Christians. If you are a Christian, God made you to be a part of something that he is building, his church. In verse 9, he goes on to say, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of the darkness into his wonderful light. Wow. So you were chosen. Did you know that? Chosen for what? To be a priest. And this is going to change a lot of things for us as we come in here. And if you are saved, if you believe, you are a chosen priest of God. And we're going to find out what that means and what we need to do with that. The honor that is given us. See, we need to declare the praises of God who saved you and set you free. That's why we are to be priests. So now when someone asks you, well, who are you? You can say, well, I'm a guitarist. No, I am a priest. Say what? Then we can tell them what I'm talking about. Right? And we should say this with conviction and gratitude because this is an extreme honor. Remember, this is the God of the cosmos. This is the God of the creation of heaven and earth. King of kings. And yet he wants us to be a part of that priesthood. So, I'm just a regular guy that's a priest, right? I'm not merely a guitarist anymore. I'm a royal priest. You are not merely a plumber, a banker, a lawyer, a football player, a biker, a teacher, a politician. I don't care what your mama said you were. I don't care what your teacher said you were going to be. I don't care what society has labeled you or what your college degree says you should be. As a saved Christian, according to the Word of God, your Creator has called you, qualified you, and ordained you to be a priest. That's pretty awesome.
Amen.
That is a promotion, yeah. So now that we have clarified our identity, let's go back to what we were talking about worship. See, God has determined our identity as priests, and as priests, our function is worship. That's our function. Before, we were identifying our function as our identity. Now we're taking our identity and saying, well, as a priest, what do I do? Oh, I worship. Now how does that go? What do I do here? So our function, simply put, is priests are meant to worship God and to help others worship God. Now, I don't want you to get the wrong impression here. I'm not talking about priests with the collars and the nice robe and all that, and or the fact that you might come to me and say, hey, Brian, I don't know nothing about priesthood. I don't know how to do it. That's okay. We're going to talk about that. See, now he has qualified you and ordained you to be a priest, so it's within you because the Spirit is within you. Amen. So as a child of God, as a believer that he died and rose again, that we might live with God in eternity, means that we are called into this royal priesthood. And since identity determines function, we have some great benefits that go along with this. Now, this is a job that you want to apply for. This is a job you want to be a part of. See, as a priest, we have the right to carry out priestly jobs. And we're going to look at the Levites and understand what they had as a job to understand our role as priests. As a priest, we have the right to carry the presence, steward meeting places, minister to God, bless his people, and help others worship God. That's what we can focus on. Those are our jobs. So we're going to want to explore this because in our exploration of this, our relationship with him is going to grow. And again, he's after our hearts. He's after a relationship with us, an intimate level that we want to have in our church, unified. That's what we're looking for. How can we come in here and be priests together? How can we invite others into this priesthood? So steward meeting places. This one's easy. See, we as priests are to set up meeting places between God and people. See, just as the Levites did in the Old Testament, who were charged with the responsibility of setting up, tearing down, transporting, guarding, and attending to the ministry of the tabernacle. Now, the tabernacle is basically just the tent, okay? This was the tent that God commanded Moses to set up so that he could meet with his people. But the Levites were the ones that were set apart to handle that sacred duty. See, now, we as priests, we steward people's meeting places with God. And we do that within our own, within us, right? We are the tabernacle now.
Amen.
So wherever we go, he's with us. So guess what? We can set up camp. This one's amazing because think about what we could do and just the opportunities. Because wherever he is, we set up tent and we meet with him. So all the opportunities at work, in the cashier's line, all the different places that you can come across and you recognize God's there, just like the nation of Israel did when they followed the cloud in the desert. And the cloud stopped. They didn't keep going. They were following the cloud. And they set up camp. They set up the tabernacle. And they met with God. So we do the same thing. We need to be very aware of the Spirit and very aware of what's going on around us so that we can set up tent and say, you know what? This guy just came up to me and I'm busy. I got to go. I'm late for work. But what he said triggered something. I'm setting up the tent. And I'm going to talk to him. And I'm going to see if we can meet with God right here and now and be a priest in this moment. We need to change the way we look at things, right? And now that we know that we are priests and we have the power to do that, what's stopping us? Let's pay attention to what God's up to. So today and the rest of the week, let's challenge ourselves to just pay attention to the Spirit. View those circumstances throughout the day and see if we can meet with the Lord. In Deuteronomy 10, he lays out more of the priest's jobs. He says, at that time, the Lord set apart the tribe of Levi to carry the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord to minister, and to pronounce blessings in his name. 3 major responsibilities: carry the presence, minister to God, bless his people. And we'll run through these quickly. Carry the presence. The ark of the covenant represents the presence of God on earth, the throne of God among his people, the glory of God. And we, as priests, we get to carry it. We get to carry the presence of God. So what does that look like? In Scripture, anywhere the ark was obediently carried, there was life, there was mercy, there was fertility, there was victory in war. And I'd love to do more extensive study on the ark and have a better understanding, fully dive into that. But for a sense of time, I'm not going to keep you all night. We're going to keep going. But we just need to know this. Wherever the ark goes, the blessing, the authority, and the power of God goes with it. And we, as priests, get to carry it. We get to usher it into the tabernacle, into the meeting place where he is, and say, the presence of God is here. He's with me, and his power is with me. We get to minister to God. I love this one. This one is where we really focus in on worship. Deuteronomy 10:8 says, we learn that the Levites, whom we are modeling our priestly jobs after, remind you, we are to stand before the Lord and minister. This part of our job gets us to the very essence of what worship is and what we should focus on. See, the second most used word that means to worship in the Bible is latruo, which means to minister to God. The main point that we need to get from this is it doesn't say to minister to us. It says to minister to God. And in fact, if you check through the Bible, you're not going to see a word that references worship that says to worship to mankind. No. See, this is where we get it wrong, and we try to make worship about us. And this gets real quick. Because we make worship about us, and we are saying to God that worship is for us. When worship is for us, we become the object of worship. We become little gods in our own little hearts, in our own little kingdoms. We become idolaters. So let's be clear. Worship is not for us. It's not about your taste. It's not about your desires. It's not about your opinion. It is for him. It is God's. It is ministry for his pleasure, his heart, his opinion, his taste, and his desires. It was never meant for the entertainment of man. It was never meant for you to say, man, I really got something out of worship today. I don't really care if you got something out of worship. You were supposed to give it to him, right? Now, if you engage in a relationship with him and that's what you're talking about, that's what I want for you. I want you to engage in that worship. So we minister to him. And then he shows up and ministers to us. This is the best and only worship ministry model that we should ever follow. It never neglects mankind. If we are worried about us, remember this, it'll never neglect mankind if you put him first. It just basically, we just need to put ourselves in our rightful place by putting him in his. Okay? We need to understand our role, understand why we come, and the power that we have as a unit. You see, he's worthy of that.
Amen.
We're also to bless the people. God instructs his priests to bless his people. And the word bless is in the Bible is used in a sense of making a person happy. But the difference in our understanding of blessing and the ancient biblical idea is that when we bless people, we want to do or say something that will make them feel good, right? I'm going to bless you. Of course, if you're going to say, well, bless his heart, that's not what I'm talking about. That's just Southern. My grandma said that all the time. I don't know what she meant if she was talking to me. Anyway. But when we bless people, we want to say something that will make them feel good. And see, now this leads to things like I was saying, worship really blessed me today, or what pastor said today really blessed me today. But see, a biblical blessing, however, was not intended to just make us happy for a brief moment of time. It's to be a catalyst in a person's life that leads them to God, to his glory, to his joy. It was to be an ingredient that causes change in their life that points them towards God. That's a blessing. Zach Neese said it this way. He said, I believe that a priest's job to see the world not as it appears to the naked eye, but as it appears through the eyes of God. And when you see a person through the eyes of God, you do not call them according to the flesh and what they currently are, but according to their potential and their future.
That's right.
Amen.
As a priest, God has given you the right to speak life and destiny into others. Bless somebody. And the last one, helping others worship God. This one just seems to go without saying. Our job as priests is not just to worship him on our own, but to help others find their way to worship him.
Amen.
Amen.
As a priest, one of the ways we bless people is by equipping them to fulfill their God-given calling of worship. Help them and equip them to be priests and understand their function. This means that we are teachers and we are sent into the darkness of the world to teach others to worship God and to be the light that he has called us to be. We must teach the world to worship so that they will learn to fear and follow God, and he will heal our land. So when God commissioned the priests, and he gave them instructions on how to bless the congregation, and we can use this as a starting point. He says, this blessing, it's in Numbers 6. We can use it in modern context because I think it still holds weight and power. It says, tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace.
Amen.
This one blessing, we can find destiny, protection, the glory of God, unmerited favor, intimacy with God, and the peace of God. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. What would the world look like now if it really were a world full of priests carrying out God's work? What would it look like? It would be completely different. What if we changed how we see our identity? What if we leave here tonight saying, I'm a priest, royal priest in a holy nation, and I'm going to look to do these things, to meet with people in the tabernacle, to minister to God, to bless his people, to help others worship the Lord. So when I began speaking tonight, you might have realized that this message really was focused on believers, but if you're not there yet, you can be. There's still time. You can come and talk with me after, talk with Jim, talk with any of the pastors, with Pastor Fred here. We have time to get you into the priesthood.
Amen.
You see, we can get you into that holy nation, and we can change the focus of our worship, and we can be ahead of the game in this church. We can be as God wanted us to be when we come and gather, and when we sing, and when we have fellowship, and all these moments we are setting up tabernacle after tabernacle and meeting, and God is with us, and we are bringing his presence. Right? So if that was not referencing you, just get with me. We'll get you in the priesthood. It's a good job. I like it. Let's pray. Father, I'm just amazed and honored to be in the royal priesthood. And God, thank you for allowing me the chance to understand what that means. Thank you for letting me step aside from what I thought my identity was and what my function was, because Lord, you have a better plan. And I'm so happy to be a part of your story. And God, for those people in here today that feel that they're not sure if they're in the priesthood, God, let's move. Let's move on this. Let us be unified in our voice to you. Let us be that holy nation. Let us be a light in the darkness that is surrounding us. God, because you are a worthy God and you are most amazing. I'm just thrilled to see what you're able to do through your priesthood. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys. I hope you have a great week and have a good weekend. I'm going to go and relax now.
Very good, guys.